welcome to this month's episode of The Breeze. Let me say again how grateful we are to be back in the studio, actually looking at each other and talking to each other, responding. And we are in the middle of summer and we've got some hot topics to talk about, which is all we could talk about in the low country during the summer are hot topics. But last month, ladies, we talked a little bit about the dumbing down of America and the effect on communications and whether you could influence any of that in your individual capacity. And it was a very interesting conversation, but it led me to think about what's happening today that can be summed up in a simple two-word phrase, and that is cancel culture. Now, do you have any initial thoughts when I say cancel culture? What does that mean to you?
Tina, you've got some good answers
Well,
there.
I looked up, in case you're not familiar with Urban Dictionary, you probably aren't, but anyway, Urban Dictionary is a source for slang, colloquialisms, things that are happening out in the world, especially with the younger generations. And I found it very interesting. One is canceled or cancel culture basically means if you or anyone does something that's considered bad, being manipulative, racist, sexist, whatever, you would most likely be canceled. Basically means no one would look at you in a good way anymore. No respect. This is mostly found on the internet, and people who are mainly canceled are celebrities and online influencers.
Okay, we talked about online influencers last time.
And one other thing, in a simple term, is to dismiss something, somebody, to reject an individual or an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Margie, can you expand on that at all or give us your own take?
I think that's pretty thorough. When people use the term, it reveals a big problem with our culture. I mean, that's the end result of all of this. Mm-hmm. There are people and places and events that suffer. And a couple of items I had here was that it can ruin careers. It can also make a public figure think twice before posting controversial comments, or maybe even whether to run for office, because whatever happened 30 years ago is going to be part of this. Mm-hmm. We appoint ourselves the arbiters of right and wrong. Okay. And in a cancel culture, there's like no forgiveness or redemption.
Yeah, I find that troublesome, very troublesome actually. But actually, aren't we really just talking about ostracism in its modern form, boycotting or shunning even, as the Amish might say? And this is if you don't agree with my ideas, which are clearly correct, are clearly unbiased, are clearly the way things should be, then you need to be ostracized. You need to be canceled out of any kind of conversation, and your influence is zero. And the way we will make that happen is we will band together and, in effect, attack you.
Yep.
Yeah, socially or in writing or any number of ways. And it really, it's in anything that we do. It touches everything, whether it's going to the store, masking, not masking, vaccine, not vaccine, all kinds of beliefs that you have. And unfortunately, people are around looking for that particular thing that you may have done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It leads to like witch hunts, for example. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you said something earlier which I don't necessarily totally disagree with, but I want to expand on it.
That's interesting.
They use the word when they do something bad. And then, isn't it true also that you don't have to do anything bad? You just have to do something maybe somewhat questionable or controversial. Mm-hmm. But it could be a completely legitimate point of view. But if the police out there, I'll call them, to deem you to have said something that they disagree with, they can destroy you on social media. They can, make your life miserable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you know, we've seen it in politics, we've seen it in entertainment, we've got people apologizing for things they did 25, 30 years ago when they were callow youth that haven't even been brought up.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to pre-apologize so that they don't destroy my career.
For anything that I may have ever done since I was speaking.
But it's like sitting in judgment.
It sure is.
And it sure does take away freedom of speech. You know, this is not the America that we know. There were some, they say centuries ago it was tar and feathering. Today it's a hashtag. You know, we jump
like
on
that.
trying to argue and eliminate. I think one of my real concerns was about the college view on this. It doesn't matter how long ago a person made their irredeemably offensive comment or how passionate their apologies are. The social media mob takes no prisoners. But there have been college acceptances that have been revoked because the student was not of the mindset that the college was. And they were canceled before they even got started. And they're not famous and their names are not known. It cuts one way. If you say something too conservative and mildly offensive, the woke call monitors on social media will find you. And if you're famous, all the better. Sports people, Hollywood, corporate America seem to have embraced this. And we have a whole list here of people who had to withdraw from a job on their own account before they got blasted.
One thing we talked about last week, and I'll raise it again, is that there seems to be a lack in this country of the ability to teach critical thinking. And part of that is what we're talking about, because when you are involved in a cancel culture, you are not encouraging or even tolerating honest, open debate of an issue.
Yeah.
What you're really saying is there's only one doctrine that's acceptable, you adhere to it or you're done. And that squelches learning and honest debate about important issues.
Well, that's how you spin this whole thing, is that first I need to ask the question, are you guilty of it? You know, have you maybe mistakenly or unconsciously canceled somebody because of something they said or did? And if so, were you really listening? Were you giving that person the opportunity to show that they're a different person, they've learned from whatever that was? Have you opened the door to conversation? I went to the dentist yesterday and my tech...
And opened your mouth for conversation?
Yeah. And my tech we were having a conversation about vaxxing. And she was talking about how one of the patients was really upset with her. And I said, perhaps they weren't even listening to give you an opportunity to talk about it. I said, we're having the conversation. And I think that's important. You know, you're entitled to your belief and I to mine, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a meeting of the minds.
Or agree to disagree in an amicable fashion.
Right.
And without hostility, without recrimination, or without some sort of lawsuit.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, I've absolutely canceled people, but I don't encourage others or go out and spread the word that this person should be canceled. I have eliminated what I consider to be negative influences from my life, while still I hope open to honest, open debate. But you get to a point of saying, I don't need to talk to that person. That person is a racist or a whatever, or just a genuine schmuck. But I think if you raise it another level or two, then you're part of a culture that is destructive to free speech, to learning, etc.
Yeah, and you wouldn't use that name of the person that you cancel. You know, it's not like you're the police going out and trying to figure out how people are doing something they shouldn't be doing and then broadcast it. I think that's well taken. I think if we don't think that a friend or acquaintance is worthy or serves a purpose, I think we need to back away. And we don't need to gossip and tell everybody who that was.
Right, right. I mean, if you an individual decision, whether you call it the popular modern word of canceling or just withdrawing or whatever, but you're not getting all your friends together and say, we're not doing anything with that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, and he should be sanctioned publicly, he should be sued, he should pay reparations, he should, whatever.
Well, what you're doing also is underscoring the importance and the acceptance of social media and giving validation to it. I really dismiss it in that when I start reading threads of negativity or what have you, I go to the next page because it's like I don't have time and I don't know these people. It's not sourced. I think it's important to source what you're reading and what you're thinking. Does it make sense? Is it within your value system?
Right. And I think, we could also talk a little bit about forgiveness. Is forgiveness something of the past? I would have to say that if you are guilty of some transgression of some social sort, as I said earlier, in your callow youth, and you're being punished for it 40 years later when you've completely evolved, hopefully,
Exactly.
into a responsible adult with, reasonable views, then why should you have to be, quote, canceled for that instead of forgiven?
Exactly. And that's what really gets me, because nobody's without having done something in their life. I mean, I stole from a grocery store when I was small.
What?
I mean, would that keep me from being class president? But really, it's like the nerve for a group of people to think that they can change history.
Yeah.
Think of Lindell, the CEO of the Pillow. The Pillow. Well, he lost around 20 advertisers because he took a stand of something he believed. So he was ousted.
Yeah.
It was canceled, yeah.
He was canceled.
Well, that's what I was alluding to when we talked about the death of open, non-hostile debate, not allowing an opposing point of view. I mean, the universities we referred to who won't hire or allow a speaker to come to campus if that speaker disagrees with the popular outlook of the faculty of that particular school or the student body. And that's just wrong.
Yeah, but I don't know why they would have them come if they weren't someone that would rally the students in a positive way. I would assume they wouldn't invite them, that they're not going to volunteer to come if they're not going to be well
if they're just
received.
going to be spoon-fed the same old pap that the faculty's giving them, then what's the sense of that?
Yeah.
I mean, Jack Nicklaus, now this is going to seem off the wall, but he says when people practice golf, they usually love to hit their best shot. If your driver is your best shot, they'll drive a ball all day. And they won't work on the part that they're having difficulty with because it's difficult. And it's the same thing. It's difficult to hear an opposing view, but to do just what you think and reinforce that is meaningless.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
Well, and I think it means we're failing the whole society here, because when they begin taking books out of the elementary school because they don't approve of some of what that represents, like where is the history? We always say, well, back then. Well, back then to some children,
I've got Margie and Doug.
What is it even going to be eventually? And how do they learn? How do they learn from history? There's a thing here that, well, it troubled me. Today, over 200 U.S. colleges and universities operate Orwellian bias response teams. And despite the claims that bias committees merely foster safe and inclusive campuses, The entire purpose of such is to deter expression that some members of the community consider offensive.
And when you say safe, these schools create safety zones so that nobody gets offended about anything. Nobody is allowed to state an opposing view that might hurt somebody's feelings. Crazy. Well, let me interrupt a minute and just say we went out on the street, talked to some residents, and posed some questions about this so-called cancel culture, and got some interesting answers. Let's take a look.
Do you know what cancel culture is, and how would you define it?
I know a little bit, and if you take the term literally, it's canceling culture, but it's canceling our culture.
Is it about people or things?
It's probably about people. There may be some things involved, but I believe it's people and their heart.
Now, have you canceled any people recently?
No.
Cancel culture. I am so sick of it. Have you ever heard about cancel culture?
Cancel culture. I think I know what it is.
What is it?
I actually cancel all the stuff that I don't like out there on the internet. Any emails, folks that send crazy stuff, that culture. I cancel that.
What about people that are close to you that perhaps you've learned something new? Are you guilty of canceling them?
I am. I cancel all the time. I'm
Ooh.
a big canceler.
Listen, I know you hate social media.
You're damn right.
Are you familiar with that thing they call cancel culture?
I know exactly what cancel culture is, and I see it every day.
You're probably guilty of it too.
You're darn right I am, but I don't take it to the extreme, which makes it harmful. In other words, if I disagree with someone, I'm able to have a good discourse and then cancel them.
I don't know if you're familiar in social media with this thing called cancel culture.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Are you guilty of it, and have you canceled any of your friends lately?
Not me, but I've had friends that canceled me.
I always wonder what's the story behind that.
Politics.
Oh, we are not going to go there.
That's right.
Have you ever encountered that or done that yourself?
No, I've never. Of course, I'm not on the Facebook that much. I don't have that much political to say. And so, no, I haven't had much experience with it.
Well, that's good because I think a lot of people take it to the extreme. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Some people will just try to cancel you, ruin your reputation. Have you ever encountered that or seen that in action?
I haven't seen it, but many years ago I know a young man who signed up on Facebook with a very controversial name, and we tried to convince him it was not a good idea because it would come to back to haunt him in the future.
And did it?
He changed his name.
Thank you.
Well, I think the problem that I see with it is that while there are things that need to be filtered or altered, updated, we need to look at what we're trying to cancel in the framework in which it was created and the sensitivity that was understood at that time. And that's the concern I have, is that we have evolved, and it doesn't mean we have to make that go away.
You know, girls, I will tell you that this whole problem of a safety zone at a college or university,
That's amazing.
it's crazy.
It's amazing.
But
I think they need to teach how to listen. Again, when I was in college, we had listening classes to see how you were listening, if you were an active listener, the type of listener you were. And also, I think we need to allow the conversation to happen and know and learn how to ask questions. Perhaps my interpretation of what you just said is totally incorrect.
although I don't know how it could be.
But really, I mean, we have to allow that to happen, because otherwise you're afraid to talk. You're going to be like this.
That's right. And when you're afraid to engage in productive discourse, that can lead to loneliness, isolation, a feeling that you are not part of the process, and ultimately, perhaps, some form of mental illness.
Yeah,
And that's a real epidemic, I think, on campuses today.
yeah. Self-expression has just been quashed.
Yeah.
Squashed,
And,
quashed, and quelled.
You know, so
Stepped
as
on.
kids grow up in school, I mean, we used to have debates,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right.
The debate class, or take an issue, whether or not we believed in it, take sides and learn how to strengthen our positions, but you didn't go away saying, ha, I won, you know, and then be cruel about it.
Right.
That's what concerns me, is the whole freedom of speech
Mhm.
and freedom
And we're
of
not-
action.
I don't think you're talking about freedom of speech in an absolute legal sense. You're talking about the freedom to express yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I think I
Right.
do
Yes,
too.
exactly, yeah.
Right.
You're right. And,
Yeah.
and to be able to have a discussion with someone that you feel differently about in topics. And learn, like you're saying a lot of that, you know, it's a communication. It's the kind of, let's get beyond this.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
But it's scary.
But I was going to say, it does, there are risks involved, because I may say something and I don't know how you're going to react to it. And I've got to be prepared, you know, to either continue the conversation or watch me as I walk away.
I usually do, Tina, I usually do. Well, and of course, the negative results are you get vigilante justice, as it's been described in one way, just a group of people attacking without authority or whatever, hostile debate, and ultimately stalking, intimidation, harassment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the real scary
Oh,
part.
it is.
And that goes across political spectrums both ways and other ways.
And also passive aggressiveness.
Well,
Ooh.
a new topic. But that's right. I think you're right, as I understand passive aggressive behavior. And that can't be good for society in general.
Right. Right.
But you know, but what do we do to solve? We always say, well, we've been bitching and moaning about this issue, but what do we do to solve it?
Well, I think just by this program, we're helping people be more aware.
Okay.
And just from kind of doing a little homework, it made me be more aware. It also has left me with an uneasy feeling,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's on its way. I mean, it's been on its way. And what this is going to mean for our freedoms, I guess, for my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
My grandkids, you know what?
Well, for the nature of relationships and
Yeah, and communication.
whether we can ever form consensus on any issue, and whether we can move forward together as a nation or as a society or as a neighborhood or as a household.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we just need to, you know, take a more positive view of maybe this person has a point, and maybe he or she doesn't, but having a viewpoint isn't a sin.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and how somebody
Absolutely.
feels about it does not define who they are.
Right.
It's just a piece of how they're looking at a situation.
That's a good point, because sometimes people will take that and make you the total person of whatever that statement was or is or value.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be things about you that I love, the preponderance of things, and there are other things that, you know, you like Brussels sprouts and I can't stand them.
Well, that's pretty universal.
But the guy, I know Tina Thompson, you know, from doing this talk show together, and she is really an enlightened person. I really like her. Instead of saying, yeah, but do you know she's one of those that's trying to squelch, you know, free speech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so it's a matter of how we spread it also. We do have to be careful.
Well,
Educate.
I think, you know, it's been a good discussion. I think we need to figure out what we can do as individuals to sort of enlighten and hopefully encourage people not to engage in certain behaviors. Any last words before we sign it off until next time?
I just want to encourage people to become better listeners, because before you react or act, make sure you're listening.
Marge?
I cannot top that comment.
Well, I can't either. I think that's important, and I think people need to realize that this is a problem, that it is resolvable or soluble, whatever the word is. And maybe we'll continue on in this vein a little bit next time, but we hope you'll join us. We hope you'll give us some feedback, and we hope you'll join us on the next month's episode of The Breeze.